former Speaker of the House, Mr. Newt Gingrich. Welcome back to St. Louis.
Well, it's great to be with you, and it's great to talk to the folks in St. Louis.
All right, so explain Donald Trump to us and explain this tweet. Is there a method to his madness?
No, I don't think so. I think this tweet's not defensible. You know, every once in a while he does something that just kind of goes off the rails, and I've said that to him, that 10% less would be 100% better. And it's ironic because he's having a great week. He's got the president of South Korea visiting. He's doing a great job overall. They're having very important trade meetings, and then he slows down his own momentum.
When you say that to him, because it seems like you're the only one who is telling truth to power, when you say something like to him, what does he say to you?
Well, he doesn't necessarily agree, and I think my hope is that gradually he will learn this is expensive and it makes no sense, and it weakens his presidency, because he's the guy who's got to learn it. That's one of the keys to understanding Trump, which by the way is not called predicting Trump, because I don't think it's possible to predict Trump. I think that Trump's a very clever, powerful guy, but he's a guy who can really move very rapidly, and I can't tell you what he's going to do tomorrow morning because I'm not sure he can tell you what he's going to do tomorrow morning. But I can show you patterns that are clear, that extend through his whole life. He's going to be visionary. He's going to have very big goals. He's going to work extraordinarily hard. He's going to seek out the best. I mean, he consistently looks for, the best architects, the best artists, you name it, the best chefs for his restaurants. And I think that pattern is there. If you look at his cabinet, it's a remarkable cabinet made up of people who are really very, very impressive.
No question about it. And I think a lot of people, let's talk foreign policy, love his Secretary of States and his some of his other Mathis and some of those. But does he not undercut them by either not giving them the people they want to work with in terms of Rex Tillerson, and or undercutting their message while they're out around the globe?
Sure, I think they need more coordination, and frankly, the struggle between the departments and the White House is normal. Every presidency has this kind of situation. Every presidency has. If you bring in really strong cabinet officers, they want their own people, and then the question becomes, are the people they want compatible with the president and compatible with where he's going? And I think this kind of tension is pretty normal for almost any administration. I think they do need to coordinate a little more on where they're going with certain policy strategies. You don't want your Secretary of State being undercut or your Secretary of Defense being undercut when they're going out around the world. But on the other hand, these are really strong personalities, and I think that they are collectively working better and better as a team. And I think that the president's trip to Poland and his trip to the G20 meeting in Hamburg and his trip over to see President Macron in Paris for Bastille Day, I think those will all be very, very effective trips. And it's one thing that they've surprisingly, the area he's probably done the best in is the area people thought he was the least prepared for, and that's because he's really relied on his professional team to organize the trip to Saudi Arabia and to Israel and to the Vatican and what have you. So that's a zone, I think, that he's had the fewest mistakes, frankly.
Newt Gingrich and his new book, Understanding Trump. Mr. Speaker, so is Donald Trump, it's almost like it's a wink and a nod. He knows the things he does is wrong, but he's doing it to get a rise out of somebody. Or does he really think he's doing the right thing by this?
No, I think sometimes it's a pattern he developed years ago of constant motion. Trump at one level is an entertainer. He loves to keep people moving. He loves to get them engaged. And some of the habits he developed don't work for the President of the United States. The president's got a very different kind of job. He's in a very different position. The whole world watches him. And I think sometimes what you're seeing is a guy who hasn't fully adjusted to the limitations of being president. And I think that's something. But on the other hand, I see areas where he has adjusted brilliantly, and he's trying to bring about very large-scale change. And I would say overall that he has done very well. with this being one of the few really obvious weaknesses.
Does he approve of you writing this book, and has he read it?
He has. I don't think he's read it. He's got more important things to do. Plus, he probably thinks he understands himself. I didn't ask him if he approved or not. I told him at one point I was writing the book, and he thought it was fine. And his family really helped. Eric wrote the introduction, and his team up at Trump Tower helped us get the pictures that are in the middle of the book. So there's some really good family pictures in the book. But I didn't submit it to anybody. This is Newt Gingrich's version of understanding Trump, and I'm happy to defend it. And I know that in particular Eric did read it because he was going to write the introduction, and he thought that it was a fair and honest portrait of his father. And there are places where I say there are things I think he doesn't do very well, and because I think it's important if you're going to write something like this to try to be candid and not just write some kind of advertisement that's totally positive, because nobody's totally positive. All people have some weaknesses.
Newt Gingrich, last question for you. You have said recently that the president cannot be impeached for obstruction of justice because he's the president, and yet you've been criticized for voting to impeach President Clinton for obstruction of justice.
Yeah, in both the Nixon and Clinton cases, there were very clear, obvious crimes. In Nixon's case, there had been a break-in, which was a felony. In Clinton's case, he committed perjury, which was a felony, and he actually lost his license to practice law in Arkansas. And so in both cases, you had a crime precedent to what's going on. In this case, the question is whether or not the President of the United States, talking to his subordinate, the FBI director, can, for example, fire him. And there's no question under the Constitution, the President has the constitutional right to run the executive branch. That's why he's called the chief executive. So that you'd have to prove that there was a crime. You can't just say, we think what he did was politically wrong. That's not an impeachable offense.
Got it. A very important distinction. Newt Gingrich, the book is called Understanding Trump. Thank you for your time, sir.
Great talking to you.
You got it. 6:58.